Hello. You don't know me yet, I guess. I recently uploaded a video that may or may not get taken down and contemplated uploading a reaction to What is a Woman, the full documentary. It ended up being like a huge upload file, 4 hours, like over 10 gigs, and obviously that would have been taken down anyway. So I'm just gonna end up doing a critique instead, which is this video, and probably add like audio and pictures. I'm new to editing, so it's not gonna be anything special. I'm just gonna skim through, and it's gonna take a while, but I remember the gist of the video pretty much, so we're just gonna review it. Matt Walsh is a transphobic, right-wing, self-proclaimed fascist, and obviously a piece of shit. I think he might have pedophilic tendencies, but I'm not on Twitter, so I don't know. He probably embarrasses himself on the daily. Matt Walsh, I mean, he's an idiot. He's a conservative. There are no moderate conservatives anymore. They are in denial or stuck in the past. We're in a new age with the alt-right. They have consumed the party. People like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene have shifted the party into, how do I put this, ultra-fascist territory. The mainstream is now QAnon conspiracy and JQ questions are commonplace. These people are batshit crazy. Anyone who follows them is a sorry sight, but I have no sympathy and they can fuck off and die for all I care. Because I love democracy. I love maximizing positive freedom. That may not be the reality, but this irrelevant video is like an antithesis to that. And without further ado, let's review it. So let's start with the beginning, where Matt Walsh asks, "What is a woman?" a bunch of times. It starts with a birthday party where boys and girls are color-coded, blue and pink.
Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs.
An epic troll to express Matt Walsh as being a man-child stuck in the 19th century. And then we get to the title cards, which I can only assume are the precursors of a pre-civilization. In all seriousness, a bunch of clips from the 1950s. What a good way to show that Matt Walsh is stuck in the past. I am going to refer to this long-winded production by Matt Walsh as a documentary without the finger quotes, for time's sake. However, make no mistake, I do not consider this a real documentary for many reasons. Documentaries usually back up claims with evidence or have real anecdotes. In other words, this is like hyper cherry-picked, politically motivated slander. I should also mention that I have been finger blasted by adverts and trailers for this documentary, by Daily Wire ads. I don't think I necessarily have to say this, but the whole thing just panders to the conservative audience, and it's just right-wing rage porn for people who have confirmed their biases. As I will show throughout, all of the arguments made in this documentary are easily refuted. They hold no truth or evidence. They really can't back it up. Of course, the non-stop ads prove that Matt Walsh has a marketing team behind him. However, I do feel the need to critique this anyway. So then Matt Walsh walks to a pond, says he likes to come out here and think. This is easily debunkable, I think. He talks about nature or some shit. He has concerns about paying for 4 weddings instead of 2. I have no idea what this means. I have never heard of one of the participants in a wedding being fully paid for by their parents. I don't plan on getting married, but maybe I'm out of the loop. If I had a wedding, I don't know if there would be anyone to pay for mine, so I would like to think this really shows the class separation between Matt Walsh and the working class. I guess peddling bullshit through a paperback to unsuspecting middle-aged people is a good marketing strategy. Is this good? Oh my god, am I gonna have to record all this again? So, after this super introspective scene of him fishing, at least Matt Walsh would like to think it's introspective, he says he needs therapy to try and prove that the simple distinction between sex and gender and their two definitions is worth a documentary. This proves to be a real anvil in Matt Walsh's brain compared to what he believes, which is that trans people should just die. He would never say this, but we're not stupid. He is likely ecstatic to be participating in the stripping of trans rights in America right now. Instead of trans people taking the steps needed to improve their lives, Matt Walsh finds his real problems to be more important in this documentary. So he goes to this therapist and pretends therapy is interrogating someone about sex and gender for some odd minutes. So the therapist's name is Gert Comfrey, who I actually misgendered in my first recorded critique, and found out through watching it, and simple as it is, I just corrected myself. Gert identifies as a man, not a woman, and then I moved on with my life instead of being a bitch baby about it. So he asks the gender affirming therapist, Gert, the distinction between gender and sex, and retains none of the information. Gert says that sex is assigned at birth and gender is applied afterwards based on sex, which is absolutely correct. Let me back up to where I said this was right-wing rage porn and add that this is the kind of manufactured outrage content that keeps the working class divided. While the people in power do things like cutting taxes, lobbying for politicians to aid in their efforts, manipulate the market, that kind of awesome stuff. This effectively is the accelerated means to the end of the destruction of capitalism, or a new form of it, like technocratism. I don't even know. We are in late stage capitalism. Do not follow the subreddit, please. It is full of tankies who have no idea what capitalism or communism actually are.
Socialism is when the government does stuff. And it's more socialism the more stuff it does. And if it does a real lot of stuff, it's communism.
The one-party People's Republic of China is not socialism. Russia's aberrant invasion of Ukraine is not communism. So to go back, Matt Walsh asks Gert where we learned the distinction of gender and sex. Now, I didn't attend Republican conventions or turning point rallies for crowdfunding. I learned it growing up and learning from those around me. And to a minute defense, Matt Walsh didn't grow up when I did, even though it does appear that way. But the real reason I know this is because I listen to credible experts in the field and agree with their educated understanding. Of course, language adapts and changes. We do not use Victorian-era colloquialism or even talk like we did in the 80s not that long ago. Instead of longing for the past and reminiscing for the good old days, I continued to adapt with the majority of society and get with the times. In other words, not being a man-child. Instead of funding a big production, no loss to the Daily Wire, I'm sure with Ben Shapiro's gold investment ad reads, I'm unsure of the budget for this film and it remains a mystery to me. I would love to see maybe a link to that. But how hard is it to hire a camera crew and do some emotionally charged editing? Not very difficult from what I've seen. Okay, back on topic. Every credible expert Matt Walsh talks to in this documentary, he simply ignores until latching on to the one expert he can agree with throughout. And then just other people who don't really have the credentials to be referenced, honestly. So I'm going to jump ahead and skip through because I don't find it super important to go through every small detail in this. He goes and asks inane questions to people on the street for reactions, and it's some of the most useless footage in the film, but this is used to infer Matt Walsh's perspective, which is that he hates trans people and is soy-facing about society. And going into a crowd is an effective way to be a political advocate with minimal blowback. Of course, Steven Crowder does this with Change My Mind, and he would be obliterated in any debate, which is why he shit his pants when H3H3 bought Sam Cedar on and sent Cold Feet Crowder running to his daddy who runs the show. Steven Crowder is a big force in projecting absolutely insane political theories with no evidence. I have watched him claim that the Nazis were socialist, national socialists, in fact. Anyone who could believe this has a room temp IQ. Of course, the Nazis were not socialists. Despite their name, they were called fascists for a reason, and Steven Crowder makes claims like this to obfuscate the truth that fascism is a right-wing ideology. I actually vividly remember an amazing history teacher I had in high school passing out papers and teaching us about this tactic that right-wing leaning or flat-out fascists used to try and prove that communism leads to fascism. Of course, this is not true. True communism, unlike the Soviet Union, who bastardized the name, is not state-owned markets and is in fact a left-wing ideology. For more info on political ideologies, though, I highly recommend Halim Al-Raz videos, especially the one on political spectrums. His editing skills are out of this world, and I will put a link to his video. To wrap up, I would challenge any right wing pundit to define socialism or communism for me. They continue to fail, they cannot do it, and I would place every cent in my savings betting they can't do it. Of course, when right wing pundits think of communism, their vision just like flashes red, their brain shuts off. They really can't do it. I don't know why. I mean, it's not that difficult. You can be mad at authoritarianism every day, any day. I am too. You just have to use the right terms, and that working class division, it works really well, and the right wing does really latch on to it. Alright, so back to the film. Oh, this isn't a different day, I just had to take my sweater off. Matt Walsh then goes into his war room and stares pensively at a drawing board. Through my initial critique, I was a huge advocate for going on Wikipedia. You will save more time, effort, and money and resources doing so, and you won't look like a fucking idiot in the process. So Matt Walsh then goes to see Dr. Marcy Bowers, a renowned gender confirmation surgeon and gynecologist. By the way, I must interject that the video I clipped of Jordan Peterson was incredibly funny. I did not watch it fully until doing that edit. In that unedited video, he compares surgeons that do transition work to Nazi scientists who experimented on people in World War II. Kind of like a child putting two and two together. Beyond this being super fucking inconsiderate, I have done research in the past on this, and some of the experiments they did were extremely fucked up, of course, and those scientists basically got off when the US did the Nuremberg trials. All in all, the irony is lost on Peterson because he is right wing and would have sided with the Nazis every time that he had gotten the chance. Anyone who thinks I'm exaggerating this, please note the attempted coup we had in America. Albeit a sad attempt, there are still Trump supporters to this day who miserably tried to install a dictator. If you still disagree, I would recommend you watch the Jan 6th hearings for educational purposes.
You're also a transgender woman. Can you tell me a little bit about...
Well, I mean, I identify as a woman.
Matt Walsh, as you've seen in the clip, disregards Marcy Bowers' wishes because he wishes trans people didn't exist. He would be a proud leader in starting up concentration camps for trans people. Would he get the chance? This is not up for debate. Then we reach another big moment in the film where he asks Marcy Bowers if people regret transitioning. A quick search online shows that, of course, detransitioning is super rare. It rarely ever happens. Just like in his densely written book, A True Philosophical Thinker for Underdeveloped Conservative Adults, Johnny the Walrus Matt Walsh compares transitioning to childlike imagination and more desperately to bodily mutilation. This is an insensitive and uncorrelated representation, which Marcy Bowers shuts down immediately. After Marcy says the dinosaurs of the world are stuck in the past, incredibly funny. A great response to the pandering shit that Matt Walsh says. We move on to a true relic of the past, Mr. Suture, a Star Wars shop owner. His rise to fame, showed in the documentary, involved an altercation of misgendering, I believe, a city council member or candidate.
Aberdeen Councilwoman Tiesa Meskis confronted owner Don Suker about a sign he posted in his store.
Don Suture says that trans people don't exist. He is one of the most credible sources that Matt Walsh believes to have found.
You're saying councilman, he...
So 2 takeaways from this interaction can be made. One is that the Star Wars shop owner without a college degree is more informed than credible experts holding relevant titles. That anyone with common sense can see through the transgender conspiracy, or that experts in the field are just crazy left-wing nut jobs. After that, Matt Walsh interviews a pediatrician and Professor Michelle Forcier and tries to demonize her and imply that she forces 4-year-old children to transition and convert their gender. Of course, that's not how any of this works. That's not how this works. Of course, he doesn't bring on anyone who has been through the transition process, except one of the rare cases of someone that wanted to detransition. If he were to bring someone on that would put his fear-mongering to rest, they would absolutely annihilate him, and he would be in the fetal position by the time that interview is over. It is easy to deconstruct and disprove anything Matt Walsh has to say. There's no doubt he clipped this film to try and make himself look better, to no avail. I was still laughing at Matt Walsh the whole time. There's this common thread or theme for the easily shocked conservative mind. Another extremely funny moment he has with Michelle is trying to compare 4-year-olds believing in Santa Claus to believing in your gender. I find this funny, first of all, because I would consider any 4-year-old more intelligent than Matt Walsh. Secondly, Matt Walsh, like an underdeveloped adult, fails to understand throughout the whole film that social constructs do in fact exist, and that Santa Claus, much like gender roles, are socially constructed ideas, both reaffirmed by parents, both bought into, and even capitalized on. I'm not saying any of this is necessarily wrong, but it's a consideration that Matt Walsh does not consider. I don't even know how he writes books. I think that his children's book was just categorized as one. It is probably his manifesto, after all. Social structures are kind of a meme to conservatives, I think, and I don't even know if Matt Walsh believes in social constructs, something that would have been super relevant to the documentary. They affect our lives very directly. Then he walks on the street again, aimlessly like a wandering vagrant, and then we meet Dr. Patrick Gerzonka, a professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies at the University of Tennessee. We then get this amazing montage of him being told what gender studies is, and some edited representation of some insight into his brain, having what I can only assume is a senior moment of onset dementia.
Out to be sort of messy and complicated. But in that framing, when you split them up into these wholly discrete constructs, studies scholars, and really more specifically people who study gender and sex, we're not talking about sexuality right now. And the kind of academic universe that I travel in is that
he continues to fail to understand the simple concepts of sex and gender. Of course, it isn't just a good laugh, but another attempted take for Matt Walsh to degrade and dismiss the very real studies that Dr. Gerzonka has dedicated his life to. And unfortunately, Patrick tries to reach out to Matt Walsh and educate him on something he has no interest in learning, only wasting Mr. Gerzonka's time, much like Matt Walsh is trying to depict himself having his time wasted. Again, the irony is lost on him. I believe later in the documentary that Dr. Gerzonka gets agitated by Walsh's line of questioning, calling out rightfully so that he is being extremely transphobic, and Matt Walsh keeps bringing up the one truth throughout. He keeps bringing up this one truth throughout the whole documentary. I think any philosophical studies professor would readily confirm that there isn't actually one truth to reality. Of course, we are all experiencing reality and conceiving reality through our own lens, therefore, it is different. Matt Walsh wants the one truth, but like a toddler throwing a tantrum, he will not receive it and must pull up his big boy pants and realize the world does not conform to him, no matter how much money he throws at it or the Daily Wire throws at it. So then Matt Walsh leaves college.
So are gender and sex two different things? Or, well, now I can say I've been to college. Glad I didn't pay for it.
We know, Matt. You don't have to tell us you didn't go to college. Hey, I didn't go to college, but I guess some of us need it more than others. After that, we meet adolescent and adult psychiatrist Miriam Grossman, the one academic he found to agree with him throughout the film. And oh, she has a lot of degrees and plaques on her wall. Anyway, I did look into Mrs. Grossman, and she's some sort of Jewish, religiously charged psychiatrist. A very interesting pick, to say the least, though he is a self-proclaimed theocratic fascist. Then we get this extremely scripted bit at the end of the first part of her interview. You can't deny that it was scripted. It's as scripted as a fucking table read. It's scripture itself.
It sounds like what you're saying is that if a man is male but thinks of himself as a woman, he's not actually a woman?
That's correct.
Congratulations, Matt, you found the words you were looking for. So he goes back to Michelle, the pediatrician, and comes up with a super brilliant metaphor. I was truly brain blasted. He asks Michelle, if we assume a chicken's gender, is that misgendering? How do we know? Etc. An irrefutable tactic. But I guess I would say chickens don't have as complex social structures or constructs as we do. Once again, that is the animal's sex, not their gender, nor would they be able to conceive any of this, and if they could, they would never be able to relay that information to us. So what an astounding display from Matt Walsh. What other dog shit does he have to say? The setting is a high school track sport, and damn, this is getting to be work. So then we get this trans athletes bit. The setting is a high school track sports incident, one incident where some trans athletes won some races, and we get crocodile tears from someone named Selena Soul. Now, I think this girl was picked up by a bunch of conservative news outlets to whine about her losing her track races. And while it's unfortunate, I would absolutely dare someone to show me the source. I have been linked fringe cases, one of which being a trans man winning in male sports, nothing strengthening the argument. If trans athletes are winning all the sports, I think I would have noticed that. I will retract my claim that it isn't happening if I can receive some proof. However, you may just get your wish, seeing how conservative officials are working hard to strip rights from trans people, which falls under the category of taking away American freedoms. Not a good look, in other words. So he then talks to Rodrigo Hang Letnin. I believe that's how you say his name, very hard to pronounce. He's the executive director and National Center for Transgender Equality. Wow. I wonder how he will present this guy. Except one thing, Rodrigo Hang was on his A game that day and demolished Matt Walsh for a good minute. It was great to see. I don't know why he put this in his documentary, but let's move on. We get some montage of trans athletes dominating sports, and he has to put like a red arrow over the trans athlete, which is very interesting to me, because I feel like if it was obvious, he wouldn't have to put the arrow there. Very funny. But, of course, A little montage video is not evidence, unfortunately, Matt Walsh. So, again, I just need to say this very explicitly. I would love a source on trans athletes dominating sports or women's sports. Then he talks to some anonymous person on a swim team, seemingly and expressly afraid to speak up about a trans person that was carrying their team and winning for them. So she expresses her difficulty bringing up the trans issue, lol. And I don't know, I feel like it couldn't have been that hard unless you're a massively transphobic person. And you don't really have a right to bring it up, as it should be harassment to repeatedly misgender someone and out them. He's on the street again, this doesn't really matter. So then we get to the Wee Spa incident where some guy claiming to be a trans woman raped someone in the woman's bathroom. And so then they say, wow, this is a trans issue, except no, dumbass. This is a repeat sex offender issue, of course. I looked into it, and this guy, who definitely looks like a guy and goes by a male name, has a record as far back as 2003 of being a repeat sex offender. I'll provide a link to this article. Not as much all trans people are sex offenders as we were led to believe. And the takeaway is that, wow, he is trans. I guess he didn't fool me with an incredible 3-minute effort of research that was extremely enlightening. After that, he talks to Democrat Representative Mark Tanaka of California. He's a trans advocate and a proponent of the trans movement for trans rights. This is where one of the previews for the documentary comes in, where he walks out of the interview while being asked the titular line by Matt Walsh, framing the governor as being unwilling or unable to answer the question. But I think he may have gotten a stomach ulcer from holding in his aggravation from Matt Walsh continuing to be the most transphobic fucking person. That's right. As Matt Walsh demonstrates his lack of intelligence like an ape flinging shit around the room, the Chad Mark Tanaka gets up and leaves, displaying his ability to notice a waste of time, like peering into the future, like that's so Raven. Indeed, well below his pay grade. So then Matt Walsh proves that he can't use the internet. That's awesome. Probably related to those pedophilic tendencies, possibly. And then he's back on the street again, asks a person to identify a cat without saying cat. And this is kind of what the whole title of the film boils down to. It's that circular definitions don't work, except that's not really an argument. Circular definitions are used all the time, and they're still a real thing. Even if you look at the Wikipedia page for a cat, you cannot find a definition that doesn't involve the word cat. Then Matt Walsh goes and participates in the Women's March. What a progressive this guy is. Good for him. And then he gets called an asshole for disrupting the march and gets his shit pushed in or something. I just realized that my background is DaVinci Resolve, but I am not doing this again. I've already done this one time, and I'm trying to cut this video down to save time. Nobody's gonna watch an hour-long video, and I really hope that it's not gonna be that long. Okay, then he travels to Africa, where he talks to some people that have he talks to a tribe of people that have no concept of what gender identity is. So one of the implications of this is that Matt Walsh is racist, and he's comparing African tribes being primitive to like leftists and proving that they're smarter, or in another sense proving that they're smarter than academic experts and professors. He wastes a lot of time and fuel to not get an answer. He throws a javelin terribly, and then he leaves. Oh, and he also later in the documentary reads Johnny the Walrus to African kids who, again, I don't even know if they speak English. Even if they had a translator, they would still have no idea. But hey, good on him for educating the masses, really. Oh yeah, and there's also a part in the documentary where he says, while the east side of the world is not going to hold answers for me, Assuming that Africa is everywhere that's further east than America? This guy is extremely stupid, as we're proving. So he goes back to Miriam Grossman. She shows him a sex book, and he's like grossed out by it. I think this is related to the 1 minute Christian sex he has, no pleasure, all procreation. I don't know why you would tell on yourself, especially in such a big production. Then they talk about Alfred Kinsey. Now, I read up on Alfred Kinsey because you cannot trust these people. Miriam says he wanted to erase Judeo-Christian values, and I'm confused because I thought that was a signifier to being a born-again Christian, but I don't really care otherwise. So they try to say Kinsey is a child molester who raped 1-year-old children. On Wikipedia, they say the FBI looked into this and found no wrongdoing. And the FBI is sketchy at times, but I would take their word over world-renowned religious psychiatrists sought out by Matt Walsh. And then they also try to say he was an evil communist, however, reference my other talks about communism earlier. They again continue to fail to understand a social construct as well. Miriam Grossman must have missed that day in school, but hey, not everyone can know everything, and there's always opportunities to learn. Then they talk about John Money, who I also read up on. This guy was terrible, and he had an experiment where he took 2 twins, one of which had an accident during birth and lost his penis, and then he forces that one to change his gender for experiments, obviously flawed by his intervening anyway. And then the boy, after growing up, changed his gender back. They frame this as an argument against transitioning, however, the truth is that this holds a better comparison in favor of my argument. Forcing a transition, much like forcing a gender role on someone who actually wants to transition, produces the same trauma. The result of that story concludes with both the brothers taking their own lives. No doubt that the trauma played a role. No info in this documentary, just sensationalism. Then he talks to a trans man who regrets his transition and wanted to detransition. He says, I'm gonna be this way for the rest of my life. And they're forcing kids to do this. First of all, no, they're not. That's, again, not how any of this works. He also incorrectly claims that people are getting treated in a day. This isn't true also. You need therapy visits over the course of months. It doesn't take a day or a week. An hour or a day or a week. Pride month. Okay, that was very funny. He also says that puberty blockers increase suicidality rates. This is a blatant lie. He says there are no studies on puberty blockers. Wow, another lie. So no, they have studies with control groups showing trans people on puberty blockers have lower suicidality rates than those not on puberty blockers. This is some of the most ruthless shit in the documentary. They bring an uncredible source on, somebody that will agree with Matt Walsh. Basically, the only other person is self-deprecating as Blair White, who's able to take the flack and lie about transitioning for Matt Walsh. He also shows skin grafting, scarring on his forearm, and says they don't tell you about it during the process. I find that hard to believe, and also I'm willing to bet skin grafting has improved since he went through that process. The whole film is just bringing on random people to vouch for Matt Walsh's confirmed biases. Then he talks to unknown caller in British Columbia who spins this story that he can't reach out to his daughter, his son, after she went to the doctor and they made her transition within a week. Again, for what I feel like the 5th time, I am left to discredit this lie that's been perpetuated. No, it does not take a week to transition. So this guy's son, not daughter anymore, wants to transition and probably cut him out of his life and is getting his mom to support him throughout the process. This unknown caller father also sets off some major red flags, saying that it's no different than grabbing a broomstick and whacking your kids across the head with it.
She, and you went to jail for that?
It's considered criminal violence to not use the preferred pronouns. It is no different than, let's say, I were to take a broomstick and whack one of my kids over the head.
This sounds like the case of an abuser, and I'm glad his son cut him out of his life. This guy, of course, as a suspected abuser, would lie at any cost as well. Some other woman they have on, again, lies and says you can get transitioned in a week. Then they have the star of the show, drug-addled Jordan Peterson, on. One of the highlights, I would say, to talk about postmodern neo-Marxism or something. This is the most angry I've ever seen JBP, and he says that for 100 million years, gender has been a binary. First of all, this is not true. Gender is a bimodal spectrum, hence why you can have feminine or masculine traits, not bound by your gender identity. Also, 100 million years, I have no idea where he's getting that. In that one Vice interview, he says that women have been in the workplace for 40 years, since the 1980s, so clearly this guy doesn't really understand his timelines. 100 million years is quite the stretch for humanity, if I might add. And yeah, there are gender roles in animals even before then, but we're not talking about animals, are we? We're talking about sentient beings here. Jordan Peterson also says repeatedly that he would turn down or refuse to affirm someone's gender, which I believe would fall under medical malpractice. I'm unsure how that would work, but someone at all costs should find a way to strip JBP of his credentials and privileges and his position. Of course, it comes to no surprise to me that Jordan Peterson is not intelligent. I've had the unfortunate experience of listening to lectures and he just rambles about nothing, things outside of his field that he doesn't even get right. Also dog whistles about neo-Marxism. I think he had a debate with Slavoj Žižek about communism and got beat the fuck out by Žižek after proving he read like the first page of the Communist Manifesto. He's a very funny guy. He should wear a clown suit for when he goes to work. So Jordan Peterson has been dismissible in the past before his rise to fame for not understanding the criteria of Bill C-16 in Canada. And they also say multiple times throughout the documentary that you're not allowed to misgender people without being ushered off to jail. So awesome. Baseless claims that are debunked within Matt Walsh's own documentary, since they misgender people all the fucking time throughout this.
You're saying councilman, he...
I should also add for Jordan Peterson that trans people have also existed for all of humanity. There's like plenty of societies that have a third gender throughout history. He talks to some more people reaching the conclusion of the film. One is a lady who says she had to leave academia because science is gendered. That was funny, so good for her, I guess. And he has middle-aged guy on to rant about social media. However, he looks like a thumb, so you can disregard him completely. And then the actual true highlight of the documentary, where they have the trans woman Naya Okami on. The meme, the legend, on all levels except physical, I am a wolf. He has her on and asks more inane questions, and then asks for her to howl, to which she says no. Mega based.
Would you be able to give us an example of this wolf communication?
No. I'm not comfortable doing so.
Prompting the end of the interview. Also gotta respect the drip from Naya. They got the Gur shirt on and overall looking more presentable than anyone else in the film, including me right now. Then they talk about TikToks. Yeah, TikToks are cringe. They claim it's forcing kids to conform. No, This is how social cliques work even in real life. You find like-minded people offline and online, and you join those said groups. But that's too simple. We have to have an issue with the internet and TikTok and Tumblr. Then he has some weird ass or surreal experience of walking through what I can only assume is a CIA black site room full of mannequins in pink dresses. I skipped this part to save my sanity, and then we reach a point where Matt Walsh rents out some random family's basement to stay and talk to a school board. Wonder where he learned that, probably scouting kids out. So at this point in the film, we can safely assume Matt Walsh is a psychopath with psychopathic tendencies. He is not a sociopath, as he lacks the charisma. He is rigid. Then he talks to the school board and calls them all pedophiles, like a truly unhinged man, and there's some irony in there.
And when that didn't work, they tried to muzzle me with a mask.
I would thank you all for allowing me to speak to you tonight, but you tried not to allow it, yet here I am. Now, you only give us 60 seconds, so let me get to the point. You are all child abusers.
Let's move on. He talks about his book Johnny the Walrus. He goes on Dr. Phil and says, I'm not crazy, you're crazy. But we already have the film in evidence to prove his insanity. Matt Walsh, please seek mental help. He asks everyone what is a woman. I don't have to defend this. Go on Wikipedia, please. Then he asks Jordan Peterson what is a woman, and he says, go ask your wife. And he goes home, and he opens a pickle jar, and then he's like, guess I am needed in this family. Good shit. Alright, I got my background back that was supposed to be there the whole film. This is truly one of the creations of all time. Somebody really did create it. In conclusion, make sure to punch your local fascist. Cave their head in. They don't deserve the democracy or the right to tear it down.